Are you Japanese? Darwinian Britain, as I proved in the previous installment of this series, wanted your race extinct. Free yourself from British mental colonialism. I'm glad that the Japanese bombed Darwin. Good job, Japan. Take that, racist Brit. I did a world map in Advanced Wars too. It was cute, but not as kawaii as her. Are you Native American like Evo Morales, whose race Spain clearly did not genocide? Darwinian Britain wanted your race extinct. Now, a race is a very extended family, a very big extended family, so you can narrow it down to a more specific race. For example, the Native American race can be divided among Lakotas, Nahuas, Mayans, etc. Free yourself from British mental colonialism. Are you Arabian? Darwinian Britain wanted your race extinct. Free yourself from British mental colonialism of macro-evolution dogma. This is propaganda to depict the British as saviors when they were vultures and villains. What do the Arabs think of Lawrence of Arabia? I truly despise him. He said that Egyptian people are horribly ugly, very dirty, dull, and low-spirited. He described Arabs as one of the shallowest and least patient races. Now, I don't believe Egyptians are entirely Arab. That's nonsense. Most of them are Egyptians, not Arabs. People conflate Arabs with others, but that's a different issue. He insulted the Arab leader, Lawrence of Arabia did, and he ruined Arab countries according to the Arab. Brits betrayed the Arabs. They didn't give them what they promised post-World War I. Get in, loser. We are invading Poland. Brits betrayed Poland. They didn't do what they promised post-World War I. Germans invade and bomb Poland. Britain mobilizes on her comfy couch. France declares state of cowardice. Britain won't fulfill her obligations. According to the British Bullshitting Corporation, the BBC, over 1 million Indians were fighting for the British side in World War I, being given the promise of independence, which never came, when it was promised to have come. Do you see a pattern here? You cannot trust the British. Portugal had to learn the hard way. The orange in the map are Portuguese areas: Angola, Mozambique, and Portuguese Guinea. That's pretty much it. Oh, Cabinda also. I think that's all at that time. Look at the 1890 British ultimatum. What Her Majesty's government require and insist upon is the following. All and any Portuguese military forces are to GTFO. That's what the Lusitanians get for siding with pirates against España. Back to the Arabs. The Saud dynasty and those in Kuwait, Qatar, and the Emirates are all British and US puppets, Zionist puppets. That's why they recognized Antichrist Israel recently. Are you Turkish? This is what Darwin said about your race, the Turks. Lastly, I could show fight on natural selection, having done and doing more for the progress of civilization than you seem inclined to admit. Remember what risk the nations of Europe ran not so many centuries ago of being overwhelmed by the Turks, and how ridiculous such an idea now is. The more civilized so-called Caucasian races have beaten the Turkish hollow in the struggle for existence. Looking to the world at no very distant date, what an endless number of the lower races will have been eliminated by the higher civilized races throughout the world. What an endless number of the lower races will have been eliminated was Darwin's wet dream. Hitler agreed with Darwin. I must recognize the racial inferiority of the so-called oppressed nations, he said in Mein Kampf. Hitler was a macro-evolutionist like atheists are, generally. Followers of the British racist Charles Darwin. In Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler said, if nature does not wish that weaker individuals should mate with the stronger, she wishes even less that a superior race should intermingle with an inferior one, because in such a case all her efforts throughout hundreds of thousands of years to establish an evolutionary higher stage of being may thus be rendered futile. The support which I receive from Germany is my chief ground for hoping that our views will ultimately prevail. Brits were worse than Nazis. Nazis tried to genocide the Ashkenazim, failed. Brits tried to genocide Tasmanians, succeeded. Brits made Nazis look like amateurs. By genocide, I mean here kill off a race entirely. Proof macro-evolution is literally impossible. The mind is free to think. Now, some atheists have an issue with their being free to think, in which case I tell them, you have disqualified yourself from debate. I debate only with thinkers. So since the mind is free, it is not a slave. It is not a slave, so it is not a slave to physics. It is not a slave to physics, so it is not physical. It is not physical, so it is metaphysical, aka magical, aka supernatural. I easily proved it. So genes, being physical, can't determine the mind's metaphysical intelligence. So DNA evolution can't make a species into a smarter or dumber one. Atheist fanatics and other deluded macro-evolutionist racists or crypto-racists who cling to the notion that subhuman blacks were a thing would sooner believe that they are incapable of thinking, not free to think, than to concede that I'm right about that. With that argument that I gave, we can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. Gary O'Driscoll, some Irish guy, said, "As you communicate in English, keep working on the English language. It's really all you need in life." But most in the world don't use nor need it. In Latin America, where I'm from, and I've been to 3 countries there, most of them never use English, ever. And Latin America is the majority of America, and America is the majority of the Western Hemisphere. So in half of the world, English is not number one. And in China, most of them don't use English. Now the students who are forced to learn some English, most of that is probably forgotten. And if it is learned poorly. They learn more grammar than pronunciation. So they learn "nice to meet you" and that's about it. That doesn't really count, does it? And in Russia, most people don't use English, they use Russian. Russia is the biggest country in the world. So in the biggest country in the world, in the most populated country in the world, and in the entire Western Hemisphere, the majority does not use English. So this guy is full of shit. Moorish rule for 800 years. I bet you have lovely brown eyes, eh? Your poor ancestors. Embarrassing. What a racist this Irish guy is, which I can use to my advantage. Iberia to Moors was like Korea to Mongols. Consulting a map explains the conquests. I'll get to that later, God willing. The most famous British guy is a pirate. Later I say, you diss brown eyes, so you diss a black hair having person. Blue eyes means your eyes are weaker for the sun because they reflect more light, which makes dealing with intense sunlight more difficult. You're not fit for sunny lands, which is why your type get the most skin cancer in Australia and the like. You don't belong there. You also tan orange like Trump. This is the tan of a specimen not fit for the sun because he's German-Scottish. He belongs in a swamp in Scotland somewhere, looking for the Loch Ness Monster. There's a world skin cancer map, which I didn't have to tell you because you have eyes. As you can see, Australia has the most skin cancer cases in the world apparently, because Brits don't belong there. They have inferior skin for the sun. Just as my people, the Spanish natives, have inferior skin to the sun compared to black people, who don't even have to put suntan on. Now, geographical proximity explains why Iberia was taken by Moors for centuries. Look at Iberia, then look at Africa, and look at the space in between. Connect the dots. And that's also how you can explain why Vikings had more success in Britain than Iberia. They were closer to Britain, so more Viking presence there. Does that mean that Iberians were better at fighting the Vikings? So you're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite in so many ways. On the death of this guy, his dispossessed family appealed to the Muslims, which enabled the Moors to invade Iberia. They were invited in by Germanic Goths who are similar to Brits. It fell to the Muslims not because of my race, the true native Iberian race of black hair and brown eyes, but because of Germanics like many Brits. Intermarriage between Muslims and Catholics was rare. Religion prevented much. Although I'm sure Muslims had a lot of Catholics in their harems, but they had of all kinds. Black hair and brown eyes were not introduced by Africans nor Asians, for they are the colors of true native Iberians, Italians, and Greeks, and I plan to do a video covering racist Germanics and putting them in their place. Ancient Romans depicted man as tanned brown, true Italians. If you don't look like this man in the sun, you're not a true Italian. Super Mario has blue eyes, so he's a Goth or something, a Lombard or something. Not a Visigoth, an Ostrogoth or a Lombard or a Norman or some other barbarian. Mario is not a real Italian. I know, crazy, isn't it? Black hair is the coolest. Blonde Neo would be less cool. And brown eyes go best with black hair. Just as blue eyes go best with piss-colored hair. How you like them apples. Lack of melanin doesn't make your race superior. That's very logical. I prefer a woman with long black hair. I used to prefer blonde, but I grew up. Light eyes are semi-empty. Brown eyes are complete. Light eyes are creepy, animal-like, and semi-empty. Generally, they are more pretty, but also sad and cold. Blonde is for cute little girls, Barbie and Goldilocks. So manly. Now, the Irish gets put in his place further. I tell him, the US writer H.P. Lovecraft held very anti-Irish views. In 1921, concerning the possibility of an independent Irish state, he said, if the Irish had the right to independence, they would possess it. If they ever gain it, they will possess it, until they lose it again. England has the right to rule because she does. It is not chance, but racial superiority. This guy's so dumb that he confuses correlation with causation. You claim to be of a master race, but you're so stupid you can't tell the difference between correlation and causation, you stupid Brit. And I insult you because you're dead and your feelings are irrelevant. The hell with his memory. Anyway, England has the right to rule because might makes right until, of course, it's inconvenient for me to say that. It is not chance, but racial superiority which has made the Briton supreme. Why have not the Irish conquered and colonized the earth, if they be so deserving of regard? They are brainless canaille. He said, not me. Oh my, looks like the English don't consider you their equal, Mr. Irish. Put that guy in his place. So satisfying to shit on the big, giant ego of racists, narcissists, and atheist fanatics. Now, according to History.com, which usually focuses on aliens mythology, also aliens are an atheist myth. I plan to do a video covering how stupid belief in aliens is. The first non-Spanish governor of California, Peter Hardenman Burnett, said, "A war of extermination will continue to be waged between the races until the Indian race becomes extinct. We must expect this," he said. And Australia recently admitted to the British genocide on the native Australians, especially in Tasmania, of whom not one is alive, because that's how evil the British are. Killed every single last one of them. Brits worse than Nazis. National apology to the stolen generations. I should stop here because the 15-minute time limit is approaching. See you in the next one. Although I won't actually be seeing you. But I digress, as always. Bye.